And to get us started, we've got Evolving Culture for Player-Centric Games, Enhancing Engagement and Community Connection. That was a lot to say. So I'll hand you over to Frank and your first speaker.
Thank you. Let's see if this works. Okay, we already talked about the title. So today we're talking about evolving the company culture towards a player-centric approach. First, my name is Frank. I've ended up in the video games industry in 2005 when I, during a very, very boring day in my IT job, sent a 15-minute application to Blizzard Entertainment, who were looking back then for Game Masters, which is a glorified title for support agents for World of Warcraft in France. So I got the job, I moved there a few months later, and fast forward to late 2014, when a friendly recruiter from Supercell reached out. And despite my spouse and me thinking we would go further south after France, we decided to move to Finland. And so we uprooted our life, my 2 dogs, my 2 cats, my spouse, and we moved to Finland, where I joined as the head of player support back then, helping Supercell scaling their customer support efforts from very small to very big. In 2018 in summer, everything changed when I joined the Brawl Stars team to help the team to come to a conclusion if the game should be killed or go global. At that time, we had already killed a plethora of games, but long story short, we launched the game, and here we are today. A bit over 5 years later, I'm still part of the Brawl Stars team today as the general manager of the game, responsible for the game itself, the people, and our community of players. I won't touch much on what Supercell is. I just work under the assumption that most people in this room know what we're talking about. But I'd like to kick off the story with something that's very close to our heart, and that's our mission statement or our dream. And our dream is to create great games that as many people as possible play for years and that are remembered forever. To make this happen, when the founders of the company founded the company, they had a series of experiences from big organizations. And they had these core beliefs that informed the culture of the company at the beginning. It was, of course, a very different company, much, much smaller. And one of those core beliefs is core to my story here, and that core belief is that core belief of small, independent cells. Many of you might have seen this graphic already at a point or another. Supercell's live game teams traditionally have been insanely small. So think about 10 to 20 people small, including QA, community managers, etc. And those teams generally had one lead, game lead. They had no other managers in their team, no producers. And that means very little bureaucracy, basically complete freedom what to do. And we really try to think about how can we enable people to be as creative as possible? How can we encourage people to take big risks? And all of that without much in their way of doing so. And so Ilka and the team back then created this model of the reverse pyramid. Ilka will often be quoted as the CEO who wants to be the least powerful CEO in the industry. And so he has very, very strong servant leadership mindset. So he's enabling game leads in the past, who then enable their teams to just do great work. And this sounds a bit crazy, and of course a lot of companies say, we're empowering our people. But in our case, that was much more than lip service. We're talking about no portfolio management. We're talking about the craziest stuff, really. Teams deciding when to kill a game, which in many other companies would be unthinkable. And on the other side of the coin, there was this insane approach to hiring back then. I would often joke that it was easier at that time in Supercell to spend $1 million than to hire one headcount. And that's how it felt. Because hiring one person when everyone in the company wants the company to stay small and bought into this idea of a small company was incredibly difficult. So questions were, can you outsource this? Can you find a tool to do the job? Can you drop something else to make it happen? And so there was this gauntlet of people you had to go through to make a hire. So the barrier to actually convince people to hire was really, really, it was a hill. And in consequence, teams stayed small. Surprise, surprise. And you could argue that served us pretty well. We released 4 games into the wild. Many others got killed. But those 4 games, they did pretty okay. All of them generated more than $1 billion USD lifetime revenue. Ilka in his blog post last year posted that Heyday crossed $2 billion lifetime revenue. And the 2 Clash titles together crossed $10 billion USD lifetime revenue. So why change? Fast forward 2018, we did make the decision to launch Brawl Stars. And Brawl Stars was a bit different than our other games. And the difference came from the fact that our other games had a really deep, deep economy. But Brawl Stars didn't. It relied on content. More brawlers, more game modes, more skins. And ultimately, more updates. So we ended up on this content treadmill with a team that, back then by Supercell standards, was already on the bigger side. So I'm saying 20 people. And eventually we had to ask ourselves some questions. Is Brawl Stars actually compatible with this philosophy of small teams? While our players out there, they keep asking us to do more things. And then, are we delivering the best game for our players under these circumstances? Well, spoiler, the short answer is no, we don't, and we didn't. In the first half of 2020, we really reached our breaking point as a team. COVID hit. Of course, it hit all of us, right, one way or another. And while we had a bunch of things going on for us, transitioning in this new world of working from home, we had all the trust. We are not relying on control mechanisms a lot. We're not relying on people supervising other people. That was a promoter of this change. But on the other side, we were also very much used to just turn around and throw an idea in the room. And we couldn't just do that anymore. And besides that, there were other complications, like nobody in Supercell did any documentation. And I'm not exaggerating. The term design document wasn't introduced into Supercell until, 2023, maybe? So we are very much on the let's just get stuff done side of things. And then we want to do it fast. That means if you tell me it takes 20% of your time to document something, never mind then. Just focus on getting it done. But in the working from home situation where we did not all sit in the same room, that was really, really painful. So people started making decisions in an equilibrium at home by themselves instead of talking to other people. Then at the same time, of course, because that's how things go, from March on we started working from home, and in May we released the biggest Brawl Stars update since global release. And that update completely changed the meta. We introduced a battle pass called Brawl Pass, a bi-monthly season, really complex construct, ripped out all the other progression systems before. Huge update. And guess what? Just 1 month later in June, we released the game in China, which was not a small undertaking. And it was the first time that a Supercell runtime was a secondary runtime. Before, all the games were completely global. So it was a rough journey, the first half of 2020. And at the end of that, before we entered into the summer break, yes, the team was really at a breaking point. People were stressed. The quality of whatever we shipped went down. We introduced more bugs. We still didn't do enough for our players who asked us to do more. And so we really had to take pause and self-reflect. What we are doing here, is that actually sustainable? Intermission. Also have a sip of water, it's really dry here. Sorry. Stay hydrated. not sponsored by the water industry. Finland. Finland in summer. If you try to do business in Finland in July, in games, good luck. A lot of Finnish people will take 4 weeks off in a block. I didn't even know that existed before I moved to Finland. And of course, Finland has a lot of nature, tons of lakes, a lot of forest, and a lot of people have access to what's called a mökki. And a mökki is a cottage, like a summer house somewhere in the middle of a forest, far away from other people. And I got lucky enough to get access to one into this really difficult COVID period where we couldn't travel abroad. So for the next 2 months, I spent time at this house in the middle of a forest with my dogs, the cats, my spouse. And occasionally we invented a friend when we felt social. But really, other contact was minimal. And so I spent my time swimming, spending time in the hot tub, which is wood-fired, by the way, so you first have to chop wood. But what I want to say, after 2 months, I was pretty relaxed, despite all the stress before. And that was good, because that was really the first real break I took since we launched Brawl Stars. And at the end of this journey, when it was back to work, which meant back working from home, of course, I was like, okay, I thought about this. I had a very fresh perspective on things. And I was like, we cannot continue like this. And there were really just 2 options in my head. There was option A. We can just reduce our ambition with the game, do less for our players, but at the same time that would allow us to keep the team small, not burn out anyone, and stay in our comfort zone. We wouldn't have to have discussions with other people in the company while we were growing the team. It felt like this is a comfy spot here. But it would also have meant doing less for our players. Or we could make significant changes, hire more people, but potentially have to change a bunch of things in the company and in the team. And of course, we cannot make such a decision in isolation, because it's a big company, it has been core philosophy forever. And so we approached Ilkka, our CEO, and we got his buy-in. And it's not very surprising. If you know Ilkka, he's a very ambitious man. And so we ended up with him backing us up on hiring more people for the team. And of course, that didn't mean it was easy to hire more people. There were tons of discussions, people challenging us, why are you hiring these people? But having the backup from the leadership team was instrumental for us to make this happen. And so, where did this lead us? Yes, we grew. We grew quite a bit. We're now 540 people-ish. I guess today, maybe already 550. And the Brawl Stars team is 45 people strong now. We're still hiring. So we're expected to grow at least by 10 people, maybe 15 people this year. And it also came with a little bit of baggage. Because when you have a team of 45 people and 1 lead, you're not doing anyone a good service. So we have more leadership in the teams now. We had to structure the teams a bit more, with more focus for each of the teams. And yeah, some teams even hired a producer. That is crazy. We're still looking for one, by the way. But at the same time, this allowed us to do so much more for our players. We leveled up in all areas of the game. We managed to scale live ops better. We actually have a live ops team. We managed to do more on the development side. We can do more QL changes. We don't have this backlog of nice to haves anymore that always get dropped in favor of more important things. So ultimately, we can just do much more for our community. And that really positively impacted our game and our product and our players. But it's not only true for our live games. It also unlocked us to change something important that we now can dream bigger for our new games. And I want to take the example of Moko. Moko is an MMO action RPG. We tested it recently in the US. It's still in development. And, well, it's an MMO ARPG that comes with a lot of content needs. And so doing something like this with a team of 15 people sounds pretty daunting. And so in the past, we very often heard these comments on the floor that people were like, wouldn't it be cool to make an MMO? Wouldn't it be cool to make an open world game? And the answer was always, yeah, but we can't. So we unlocked these dreams by making these changes. And of course, the Moco team is not the biggest game team in Supercell by far, but it's still bigger than our game teams traditionally were in that phase of development. Ultimately, we are evolving our culture in Supercell for our players out there to do more for them and to really embrace our dream. If you just take one thing away from the talk, then it's this. Cultural change cannot be avoided. And sometimes that means sacrificing your precious lambs. Because it's like, and those are the written things some people, some companies have in employee handbooks and on the walls. But it's also about the unwritten ones, the ones you just live every day, because they're part of your culture, if you want it or not. In the case of Supercell, well, it meant doing more for our players to make our dream come true and embracing change, even though that's sometimes pretty scary. Now, if you want to follow my escapades on Twitter, sorry, X, scan the link on the left. But also, to make our dream come true, we need the best people. Supercell is hiring, and you can go to the event page we have set up for this event on the right side. Thank you.
We might have time for one really quick question, if there is one. At the front, have we got a microphone?
So, thank you. Are there challenges around the on-site working when it comes to scaling and finding great talent, and also diversity as well? Because I know that that's something Supercell cares about.
Yeah, it's a super good question. One thing I actually forgot to mention in between as well, like the change is to have more leadership in the team and to have a bit more structure in the team and a bit more process. Means that we started opening the doors for juniors, which wasn't the case before. But to your question, and Supercell, again, it goes back to the microphone's still working? Okay. In Supercell, it goes back to the teams have full power, right? So each of the game teams can decide how they work. And so that each of the game teams can ultimately decide we're working in a hybrid, we have remote teams, we have remote individuals. So it's completely down to the teams. And different game teams now started experimenting with this. So we have some game teams like the Brawl Stars team, we are working in a hybrid. So we have a few days working from home and a few days in the office, but it's down to the individuals when that happens. We do have some remote roles, especially, for example, on the sound side. Our sound guy is sitting somewhere in Denmark. But other game teams started being much more progressive about this. And it depends, where you are as a team. Do you feel like we can start opening the door for fully remote or for a subcell which is part of the game team but sits somewhere else? What we started at Supercell is now opening the doors to these opportunities by having entities in like Denmark, Sweden, of course, South Korea, China, San Francisco, or the US in general, as well as the UK. And we're building out that network even more to be able to hire all these people. I think, yes, it's easy to find some specific groups of talent in Finland. But of course, if you want to hire the best people, you need to have a global approach. And so, yeah, to your question is, we're doing everything possible to attract as many people as possible from different places on Earth.